there is something that I really got into my heart at the moment, and it probably is a result of exiting deep grief and really having learned to live with it, and having learned to live simply and to integrate some of my vulnerability, which I didn't know I had in such a big quantity. And so I'd like to maybe explain a bit how I have come out of the deep grief, and in terms of practically, so I'm going to leave away the topic of neuroscience, and those of research can, those who want to hear more about it can listen to some other recordings that I have published on this channel. Practically, what did it mean to come out of deep grief? And one aspect was really to live with the emotions of grief, learning to recognize them and learning to accept them and embrace them, and that there was nothing wrong with it. And sometimes I would isolate myself from others. Sometimes I would just dive into what in Buddhism is called the samsara, dive into small-scale social events. Small-scale social event would be simply chatting with a group of people, or just chatting with a person, because I tend to be quite solitary, and learning to even to listen to myself talking about grief. And it has often occurred that I connect quite well with persons who have experienced deep grief and child loss grief in particular. And so I have learned to listen to myself when I talk about grief and my experience of grief. And I realized that in talking about it, I became witness of my experience. And by becoming witness of my experience, I was able to notice a progression, and then a progression to a sort of serenity about it. Serenity not because grief had gone, but serenity in terms of having really accepted that grief is going to be a component of my life. And then I should also make sure that it doesn't take over again, because obviously for the first few years it really was a main agent of my emotions. And so in that sense, I've noticed that my dwelling into the Dhamma, the Buddhist teaching, more seriously than ever before, had become an anchor, or had more transmuted from being an anchor into being the main container of, or the toolbox of my reading, of my witnessing, my experience of grief. So in that Dhamma experience, I've lived in monasteries for now more than over 2 years, and obviously being in that sort of environment, I have had the privilege to be offered first-hand teachings from persons, I would say human beings who have made their entire life choices towards the Dhamma and taking on the robes and walking the path. And some of them, which I refer to as deep scholar, deep knower of the worlds, and that they are some of the senior ajahn, some of the senior monks who know how to comprehend also the practicality of putting those teachings into practice, like by running a monastery, for instance, by running a workshop, a wooden workshop, a maintenance workshop, by learning how to fix plumbing installation and structures, and so I've experienced their knowledge, and I noticed that I started to progressively, obviously, change. We always change, but that witnessing of my change has brought me to notice how I was shedding layers of greed, hatred, and delusion, which are, according to the Buddhist teachings, the three poisons. So practically, it has meant really accepting to see my failings, accepting to read my vulnerability as being the failings of perfection. Not the failings in terms of right or wrong, but the failings of perfection, that we aren't perfect, and I wasn't perfect. Not that I was believing that I was perfect before grief, but I wasn't really looking inwards to the point where I was touching the core of what it is, this human experience that I was given to live. Although intellectually I could see and I could accumulate knowledge, but I had not yet sunk it into the heart. And grief has done that by sort of navigating me, gearing me towards coming closer to the Buddhist teachings that I had already grasped intellectually, but I had not put into proper practice, if there is any such thing as understanding deeply in one lifetime. It's really very complicated to go into that, and that's not a topic. So for me, what is important in expressing this is that this winter retreat coming, it is very important for me, would be very important for me to really visit those places where the Buddha received his inspiration, and where he started to teach and develop what is known as the Dhamma teaching, which in the Thai forest tradition are those that are really followed with strict rules. So I'd really like to emphasize the fact that yes, I was open to receive those teachings. Yes, I had a vulnerability that permitted that to see that, and by unfolding and accepting to unfold layers of teachings and integrate them in my life, I just now would like to conduct this pilgrimage in Bodh Gaya and attain and be surrounded by even a broader spectrum of like-minded individuals. So this is my aspiration, and I'm thanking you in advance for your support.